So is the Nigel Farage and Elon Musk bromance over? Just 2 weeks ago, Nigel Farage was in Florida, potentially courting $100 million donation for reform if it could be done legally from the world's richest man. They'd found sort of kindred spirits in their support for Donald Trump. They were sort of posing for photos at Mar-a-Lago in Florida, Trump's sort of country retreat where he seems to be preparing for the White House. But today they're fallen out. Elon Musk has taken to his own platform X to say that Nigel Farage doesn't have what it takes to be the leader of reform. Now, what's happened? Essentially, this has come down to Tommy Robinson, the far-right agitator, and an explosion of stories and discussion over the festive period about Muslim grooming gangs in northern British towns. Now, this scandal has been running for decades in the United Kingdom, but it's found a fresh impetus in the fact that Donald Trump, key supporter Elon Musk, has leapt on this issue and have been hammering Keir Starmer and Labour over it for days and days and days on X. Now, Nigel Farage was out and about this morning saying, look, he doesn't necessarily agree with Musk, his sort of super fan, his new best friend on Tommy Robinson. Nigel Farage spent years distancing the Reform for Brexit Party, UKIP, all of his previous parties from Tommy Robinson and the EDL and his supporters. He doesn't allow their supporters to join Reform, and he wants nothing to do with them. But Elon Musk has taken it upon himself incorrectly to say that Tommy Robinson's a political prisoner. He's been locked up, not for contempt of court, but for as a political prisoner for support, for blowing the whistle, so he says, on these grooming gangs. Now, that's not strictly true. Nigel Farage has come out and very clearly said that. He said this morning on the BBC that he was going to take Musk aside at Trump's inauguration in a couple of weeks and say, look, you're wrong on this. But, as a free speech absolutist, Farage defended Musk. A little bit embarrassing. He said it was cool for reform that Musk, the man that blasts rockets into space, has made the Tesla car, has a load of other companies. It was cool for young voters that Musk was interested in reform. Well, that's blown up in his face today. Now, look, in the short term, it looks quite embarrassing for Farage. He can kiss goodbye to that £100 million donation, you might think. He's come out and tweeted back saying, look, I disagree on a point of principle on this, on Tommy Robinson. Now, look, short-term embarrassment. Labour supporters are all over it, saying how amusing it is. But there's also a lesson there, really, for Farage. Careful what you do. Suck perhaps with a slightly longer spoon, especially when the person you're getting into bed with is a notoriously fickle billionaire who doesn't really perhaps know what he's talking about when it comes to British politics, like he does when it comes to pulling giant rockets out of space with chopsticks, so to speak. So a bit of a backfiring there, but in the long run, I do think it might not necessarily be as bad for Nigel Farage as it first seems, in the fact that if he's able to say, look, I'm not going to give in on my principles. I don't like Tommy Robinson. I think the EDL are scum. I think they are, far right agitators who I want nothing to do with. That would help him in his ultimate goal, which, don't forget, is to become the Prime Minister in 2030, or at least win hundreds of seats. Now, he won't be able to do that from a far-right position. He has to be, you win politics by bringing as many people into your tent as possible. And Tommy Robinson, despite what you might see on Twitter or X or Facebook on social media, remains one of the most divisive and toxic characters in British public life. So a bit of an awkward one for Nigel Farage today, but in the long run might not hurt his ultimate goal of taking reform into the Tory heartlands and winning over millions more voters in 2029. However, there's another lesson, I think, for Farage here in that, look, just be careful, quite how quickly you make friends with people. Obviously, he's sort of all in on Donald Trump now. Now, Donald Trump seems to be a little bit more moderate, seems to be a little calmer. We're seeing a slightly different Donald Trump, but lots of British voters remember the chaos, frankly, of the 4 years he was in the White House. And if the Trump bromance, friendship goes wrong for Farage as well, you might think, once bitten, twice shy. He perhaps should have been a little bit more careful with who he gets into bed with. So a tricky day for reform, a little bit embarrassing, and some lessons learned, I think, probably for the man that really is trying to paint himself as potentially the next British Prime Minister, but certainly the official leader of the opposition in the United Kingdom. Just be careful who your friends are.